Welcome to the podcast that helps you protect, preserve, and improve your small business capital the right way. Your host, the Funding Doctor.
Hello, welcome to the Funding Doctor, coming to you today from Studio 2A here at Len Craig Corporate Offices, and my co-host, Michael Hayes. How are you today, Michael?
I'm well, Tim. Thank you.
Great. Are you having a good business day?
I am having a great business day.
Making some dreams come true.
3 today.
Very good. That's outstanding. So, I kind of want to jump right into this because there's probably some ground to cover here that'll take a little time. But today I want to talk about startup businesses, Michael, and how startups get funding. We know that a lot of startup businesses happen because folks either, mid-career lose their jobs and decide that they're tired of working for corporate America or someone else, and they've got ideas, they want to do their own thing, or possibly they're younger and they just want to get started on their own 2 feet, being their own business owner, and that's all great. Fuels our country, makes things work great, so we love all that. But boy, being a startup and trying to find funding can be a very tough scenario.
I got a kid started this week, Tim. He's 18. 18. He graduated from high school this year and is already starting his own business.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What's he doing?
He's doing some e-commerce, web-based retail sales.
Neat. That's great. That's awesome to hear those kind of stories. So I want to kind of talk about the 5 things, in my opinion, and I say that because you can go several places and find other options or more options, but the 5 that I really think work are the ones I want to talk about for startups and really are the ones that if I was a startup, I would spend my time doing. But before I even start with my top 5, I want to talk about SBA, because I'm not going to talk about SBA in the top 5, and somebody's going to want to write me a note and say, man, you didn't talk about SBA. So I want to talk about it long enough to say, I don't believe it's one of my top 5. In record years, only 60,000 of 28 million small business owners were able to get SBA loans. And they're hard to get. They require capital, collateral, and that's just a very small amount of the criteria they take to get started. So it's just not one that I feel is a very viable option for most people. It doesn't mean that no one can qualify. It just means that's a really, really tough one. And so I kind of want to talk about ones that most people might be able to dig their feet in and get one of these other types of financing. So just want to clear that before we start so I don't get all the letters that I don't know anything about the SBA. My first one, Michael, on this would be 401k financing. And this would probably be more for the person who's in that mid-career or later career and they've left their last job and they have a good 401k. A lot of people don't know that they can roll that 401k over without all the tax ramifications and use that 401k to start a new business.
Not to mention penalty-free.
There's always a tax ramification at the end if the business was sold or whatever, but out of the box, you avoid all that and you're able to use all of your money as you wish to start your business. So if you have a 401k, it's a knockout punch. There's no payment to make, Michael. Think about that cash flow when you start a new business. There's absolutely no payment to make. You use your own money and you get started.
Yep, and those programs even allow for rebuilding of that 401k. So it's not like you're using up your whole retirement for your business and you never have it again. You actually get to rebuild it.
Absolutely, a great option when you're getting ready to do a startup business. And actually, in a few weeks here, we're going to have one of the top 401k folks in the country here with us talking a little bit more about that. So make sure you check our schedule if that's something you might be interested in, because it really is a great option. The second option, of course, is near and dear to us, and that's unsecured funding. One of the things that is available to a lot of people is unsecured funding. And there's lots of ways to do that right. There's lots of ways to do that wrong. So, but if your credit is good, doesn't have to be great, has to be good, and you can meet the small little amount of criteria. It's not industry specific, so everybody qualifies as far as their business type. It is with good credit, no documentation, no collateral. It's something very easy, and it's got very low payments, which keeps it real cash flow friendly when you're starting your business.
And you're referring to the unsecured business credit cards.
That would be, well, that's one for sure. So a great thing for a startup business. It also allows them to probably get things going in the right direction. And, if you couple that with a 401k, you really can do something here of a pretty good magnitude. And the great thing about it is that unsecured financing can be coupled with almost any other kind that there is to get you more financing when you're starting up. And obviously, one of the number one things that happen is we never get enough funding when we're starting a business. I see business plans from people who send them over and say, here's my business plan. And I always kind of look at that, and, what always amazes me is they have a great plan put together of, how their business is going to open, what they're going to sell, or what that piece is, how all that's going to work. And I never see the funding plan. They assume they're going to go get an SBA or some other kind of funding. And I always wonder what happens when they don't get that. Do they stop, or do they understand that there's way more options out there if the one that they're looking for doesn't work? So everybody always has a favorite, and they always will, but certainly unsecured funding is probably one of the largest options out there for a new startup small business.
The lowest risk, too. I mean, very little risk if you're doing that the right way.
You're not risking homes,
right?
Cars, your family, anything. You're being able to, start your business, and what you risk it the most is your credit score.
Credit score, which can be rebuilt.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the second option. So we got 401k, we got unsecured, and my third option is the peer-to-peer loan, or in some cases microloans, kind of in the same ballpark. Peer-to-peer loans have become huge and way outnumber the SBA loans. I mean, they are, heavily popular right now. They're loans made to you by your peers.
Lending Club, Prosper, just to name a couple. That's what you're talking about, Tim. I think I'll follow you right along with that.
Absolutely. So, another good form of financing for a startup. You simply have to have decent credit and convince someone that what you're doing is worth loaning you the money. So a great option for a startup business. And again, I think that, you could do all three of those options, Michael, if you were starting a new business and continue to build your capital for the future.
There's definitely some good strategies where that is absolutely not only the right thing to do, if it's possible, but for the longevity of a business and not running out of capital, Tim, I mean, there's no argument at all.
And then, of course, the fourth option, and I always like this one, are friends, families, and fools.
Everybody's favorite, right?
I mean, friends and family. Sometimes they're the ones that will jump right out there and offer to loan you money to get your business started. And certainly nothing wrong with that. Some people prefer not to be locked into their families or their friends. Might not mind a fool, I don't know. But, certainly one of those areas where, it is a viable option when you're a startup business to borrow money from friends and family and get started that way. And then, of course, my fifth one is your personal savings account. Again, it's a way to use your money with no repayment. So great cash flow to start with if you don't have a payment to make. But again, you can couple some of that with some of these other options if you've got a personal savings account and really get yourself into some pretty good capital to get that business rocking and started and be able to grow it at a speed that makes sense.
And I think it's important too, Tim, and all of your top five are great options, but all of them work, in my opinion, all of them work a lot better with each other, not just one source of funding. I talk to lots of people, business owners that have started their business, running their business, looking for additional capital, and they only had one source of funding. And when that's gone, if you've got nothing else to kind of lean on or move towards, then you're just kind of trapped.
Well, certainly it probably is not the best idea to start a business with only one source of funding and one amount to work with, because it's amazing how quick the money goes when you're starting, because you always forget things, or you always decide you want a little bit more to get started, or you need a little more space. Technology can costs you a lot of money when you're getting started, that you're not really counting on. You don't understand what that looks like. Marketing, one of those top 3 reasons that businesses fail is not having enough marketing. And marketing's not cheap, but it's absolutely needed in today's world to get you out there and give you the same chance as everybody else to get that next customer or client. So all those options working together is always a great idea. The more options, the better you are. And what's dangerous is to take one to get started thinking you don't need others yet and find out down the road you can't get one of the others because either something was done wrong in the beginning with the first option, or you just didn't think it through and something's changed in the lending arena. In today's world, having a mix of different kinds of these kind of products for capital is absolutely essential to help you ensure that you're able to be successful and not be part of that group that doesn't make it through that first 5 years.
Well, and you make a great point too, and I think you've said it in other podcasts, Tim, and it's really one of the most important things. Lending trends change. I mean, as long as I've been in the business, the only real constant is that lending trends change, and you gotta when you're funding a new startup business, I think it's really important to stay as diverse as you can. Get more than 1 or 2 of these options in place. The unsecured funding options are a great one because most of those involve revolving credit lines. So if you're not using them, you're not paying for them.
Absolutely.
And they're sitting there waiting for you to use them. So I echo everything that you're saying, and even recommend more so that when you're funding your startup business, get more than you think you need. If your business plan calls for $50,000, add 20 or 25 cents to it, make that a funding goal, and get yourself set up so that you don't run out of money.
So out of my top 5 options, Michael, there's 2 here that require no repayment, the 401k and the personal savings. There's not a payment attached to those. You use them as you need them, and you dictate how much you want to put back to replenish those.
That's a really good point.
And in the unsecured financing, we're looking at only paying for what we're using, so we can have additional capital as much as we want without having to make a payment on that if we're not using it, but it's there when we need it. And then your peer-to-peer and your friends, family, and fools. So those are my top 5 options. I'm sure that someone will beg to differ with me on that. That's okay. I feel confident. We do this every single day. We talk to hundreds and hundreds of clients every month, and these are the ones that work, and that we can send a client out with knowing that we can have results. So anyway, I appreciate your time today. Our next podcast next week, I believe, we actually are going to have Levi King here from Creditera, and he's going to be here to talk about your personal credit and your business credit and how those things intertwine and why it's important to make sure that you've got business credit being built. So until then, Michael and all you folks out there, Funding Doctor out.